Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live podcast featuring Kasha Spellman-Timmons. We're very excited to be presenting this podcast today. My name is Dr. Circe Lecomte. I'm co-CEO of the Boston Congress of Public Health, and I'm joined here with our BCPH fellow who's going to be presenting today. Now, in case you don't know, the Boston Congress of Public Health Thought Leadership for Public Health Fellowship is actually a longstanding program of the agency. It incubates the next generation of thought leaders in public health and advances a collective impact for health equity through public health advocacy and seeks to diversify, democratize, and broaden evidence-based public health dialogue and expression. And one of the things, and one of the hallmarks, I should say, of this year's cohort of Thought Fellows is that we have been training them to put together a platform featuring podcasts. And one of the requirements of moving forward in the production process is doing a live podcast webinar for our constituents, which is all of you out there. So thank you very much for joining us today. I don't want to take away from Kasha's time and her esteemed guests, but I would like to hand it off really quickly to my colleague who's on screen. I didn't know if you wanted to say a few words just to introduce yourself, Sabath.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm joining from Nigeria, Abuja to be specific. And it's good to have everyone here. And this is one of the things we are testing out, just to provide that platform where we can have, public health enthusiasts who have passion for specific areas try out new things. So we'll be looking out for your feedback, and would have made podcast surveys. So we want those feedback. And after the presentations, we would also send out our surveys so that you could help Cache put together an interesting and a very, very engaging webinar series as she moves along the fellowship. So I'm going to hand it over to Cache. Cache, over to you.
Thank you,
and just one final thing before I go away. If you have any questions, Kashe and her guests are going to be answering them throughout. Just put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll alert them to your queries. So without further ado, I'm going to be quiet and go away and hand it off to our esteemed BCPH Thought Fellow. So take it away.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Circe and Sabath. Welcome, everyone. We are very excited. I'm very excited, looking forward to our conversation today. So welcome to the Liberation Sessions, a fresh take on mental health, healing, and justice. This is our debut episode, and we're going to be exploring the intersection of mental health, justice, joy, healing, and genuine connection throughout. I'm your host, Cache Spellman-Timmons. My pronouns are they, them. And today is a very, very special episode because I get to do my first episode with two of my favorite humans, Alicia Stettler and Christian Stettler. We're going to be diving deep into not only mental health, healing, and justice, but what that also looks like in partnership. So I'm really excited for our conversation today. Alicia Stettler is a certified yoga teacher and creator of The Circle of Self, co-host of the Revolutionary Social Work podcast, and author of forthcoming book, The Circle of Self. I'm so excited for that. And then we have Christian A. Stettler, who is a professor of social work at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, creator of Revolutionary Social Work, host of The Critical Social Worker, a revolutionary storytelling podcast, and co-host also of the Revolutionary Social Work podcast. So thank you both for being here. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Kasha. Doing good. It's weird to be away from Christian doing a podcast. We're both in different locations and it feels very odd. I'm like missing my other half.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm doing great as well. Traveling on the road, headed to the NASW National Conference next week. And as to echo Alicia, it feels a little strange, and it also feels a little strange to be on the other end of a podcast. I've done it a few times, but I've been recording about 100 of them over the last couple of years on the other end, including a few with
yeah.
you. So
Yeah, and I'm so appreciative to you both for being here for this special moment. So I do want to ground our listeners a little bit more in who you are. So could you both share a little bit about yourselves, how you came to this work of mental health, social work, and justice? Justice?
Do you want to go first, Christian?
sure, I can go. It's a long story, but to make it short, I was a troubled youth, got into a lot of problems that followed me into young adulthood. Sold drugs, got into addiction, some criminal problems, things like that. Pretty much everything that you could name. And a lot of folks ask me how I got into social work, and I would say that social work actually chose me. And I've actually tried to move away from social work several times, and it's kept reclaiming me. And so I had just got out of jail and looking for a job, and a friend of my father said, "Why don't you go apply at this group home?" And I thought, "Oh, they're not going to hire me." And lo and behold, they did, and found out I was really good at it. Worked my way up, ended up supervising the treatment center. Went back to school, got a BSW, got an MSW, and I had these grand ideas of what I wanted to do in social work and helping out youth and things like that, opening up a treatment facility. But what I really learned especially during my MSW education, was that there were so many constraints and contradictions that I found in social work, that I became kind of disillusioned and a little bit disheartened with the ideas that I had. And I tried to move away from it, but it reclaimed me as an educator. I was recruited a couple different times as a professor to where I'm at now, first an adjunct in Hawaii, and now through the University of Alaska. And still, those contradictions kept resurfacing. And so I thought I wanted to create something new and different, which is really a collection of different ideas, but we can talk about it more later. But what I call revolutionary social work, which we've been in the process of developing over the last couple of years.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think what will come up in this podcast a lot is Christian and I, we do come from very different backgrounds and how we got into social work, which I think is very interesting. But for myself, I'm originally from the UK, and I got into social work I was studying criminology and American studies, and so I was very much in like the sociology realm. I love like the psychology electives I was able to take. And so from that, when I graduated, I still really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I ended up volunteering at a youth center where I'm from in the Channel Islands, Guernsey. And from there, it just kind of spiraled from there. So then I went to pursue my MSW, where I met Christian. We can also get into that. And then, I was in social work, but I also, similar to Christian, but different, it didn't quite fit me entirely, and my program was very generalist, and I didn't get completely what I wanted from it. And it wasn't until I ended up doing my yoga teacher training that everything just kind of melted together. And so now in my clinical practice, I include a lot of like yogic philosophies with more kind of traditional clinical therapies. And so that's where the Circle of Self has kind of stemmed from. And with revolutionary social work, Christian and I have been developing that for like 10 years, pretty much since we got together. Something has been forming. So all of these ideas have just kind of come together and are coming to fruition now. So really excited to talk about it all.
Yeah, I'm excited for you all to talk about it too, because I've been privy to it since the beginning. And I think today we'll go in and out of kind of the general conversation and then also how it plays, because I am excited to talk about how this plays out in your partnership. So I'm interested in, would you be able to tell the listeners a little bit more about what revolutionary social work is, kind of how that framework came about, what it means to you, and how has your partnership evolved kind of alongside that?
Yeah, I would
Who
say
wants to
first,
start?
The first thing that I would say is that it's a values-based system, and that's how it works so well between Alicia and I's relationship with our family, our children, the way we operate in the world with each other and in social work. And I think from my end, and Alicia again has a different path than I do, but it came from me from being an MSW student, and there were a couple key turning points for me. Is one, I had a course with Miss Angela Davis called American Punishment, which was an elective, and I was just very fortuitous that I ended up in there. And her perspectives just really changed the way I looked at things. And I came from, like I said, I was in recovery a long time ago, and they often use the serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that has a lot of validity for humility, but she challenged us to think about it differently and said, I think she said, I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I can no longer accept. And so it really revolutionized the way I thought about things. And then the other angle was we'd be at several different places. We met this Caribbean guy named Cab on the North Shore where we were staying at his Airbnb. And we were just talking story about our ideas and whatnot. And so after I had told him my ideas and what I was all about, he said, I've got a book for you. And it was a book by Paulo Freire and Miles Horton called We Make the Road by Walking. And then several other people, I'd be talking to them and they're like, oh, you've got to read Paulo Freire. And so it introduced me to critical pedagogy, moved me into critical social work, critical theory. And I love those ideas, but there was one specific thing that I felt troubled about, is that it's very daunting to think about changing these giant systems that are so enmeshed in everything that we do in social work in our worlds. And again, to make a long story short, I came to this idea that I may not always be able to change the system. I may be able to work toward it, but what I can do is I can change myself. So the main gist of revolutionary social work is that we can become more fully human, and we can change the systems, but it starts by changing ourselves.
Absolutely.
What about you, Alicia?
Well, to add to that, from what you're saying, it just brings me back to when we were corresponding with the MOVE organization when they were incarcerated. And I was specifically talking with incredible revolutionary Eddie Africa. And he wrote me a letter saying that you cannot change these gigantic systems from within. You have to step back, let them crumble and develop something, reimagine something yourself. And I think that's what, from the beginning of our relationship, when I think about the ideas we started with, we've been trying to reimagine all these things along the way for ourselves, for our family, and then it just kind of ripples out for the community and for what we see for social work. And so, it being value-based, I think is so key, because we were talking about this the other day, Christian, about sometimes you don't know what to do in situations, but you can know who to be. And if you have these values to sit on and to found your practice on, you don't need people telling you what to do. You have this value based. And if we all live by ththese values that we think are key for the well-being of ourselves, but also the world, then I think we can get to a better place. So it's come from many different ways. And I think also with myself getting to a point in my career where I'm supervising and I'm helping newer clinicians coming out of graduate school and interns. A huge thing for me is not allowing people to think that they need to go through social work burnout and going through compassion fatigue. And that's a huge part of the work I do. And so that's where it becomes so important we need to be able to revolutionize and take care of ourselves so that we can do this work. And that's a lot of what revolutionary social work is about, is reflecting on that and then letting it ripple out again.
I love that. And there's so many juicy things in there that I'm going to get to. But first, so thank you for sharing more about that insight. And you both brought up some really good things, talking about what you can and cannot change, what it may be more helpful to focus on, particularly inside. And then, Christian, you brought up this thing of like changing systems that being daunting, right? So now I want to go into kind of the part that nobody likes, right? So I'm gonna read off some stats because I want to also ground this in a little bit of like where we are. I mean, in case you're not paying attention, because I don't think we need stats to see that, the mental health of the collective is not in the best place right now, right? But I just want to read some stats because I think it's important, particularly when we talk about changing and revolutionizing systems, letting it all, Alicia, like you said, burn down, and uh, uh, reimagining something new. So, okay, so I want to go over some of these statistics because this is important about like who is providing and accessing mental health services, right? So, I have things like we're all social workers. So, but 60 to 85%, depending on which stat you look at, which site you look at, of mental health providers are LCSWs. And I thought that was important to note because what that means is that folks who identify as social workers are also providing the most mental health care. And so, just so folks understand why it's important that we talk about this group specifically. However, on the other side, psychologists, only 4% of psychologists identify as Black, and even less than 4% of psychologists identify as other parts of the BIPOC, so either Indigenous or other people of color. However, or in addition to this, BIPOC communities are actually more likely to experience misdiagnosis. And when we talk about folks accessing it, we have only about a third of Black adults who need mental health care. In other words, they know that they need mental health care. They've been told they need mental health care. Actually receive that. And then only about 50% of Latinx folks are likely to receive mental health. So I'll leave some of the other stats out for a while, but I just want to ask you all, as social workers, as clinicians, as educators, what do you think about when you read these stats, which I know you do all the time? How do you see it showing up in your work, in like who your students are, who's accessing your services, what types of mental health concerns are we talking about? Just, yeah, could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, do you want me to go, Christian?
Yeah.
The one thing that comes up for me is so many things. So there's a lot of systemic issues that are obviously causing a lot of our mental health challenges. And like those stats are it's incredible how many people are suffering and trying to seek services. And we are never going to be able to provide the amount of services that people need with the system continuing to do what it's doing. Right. And so I think that's where the circle of self anyway comes a lot from that of there's no amount of therapists and therapy that is going to heal us from the system we live in. And so we have to do something different ourselves. And I'm not saying, I mean, as a therapist myself, of course, I'm not saying don't go to therapy. Right. But there's so many things that we can also do ourselves, which is a lot about the circle of self is can you look at what are you consuming? What are you eating? What are you drinking? Are you in nature enough? Are you getting enough movement? Are you getting enough stillness? Do you have a community around you? Those sort of things. And I mean, talking about stats, the evidence shows how much loneliness, stress, lack of belonging, lack of community, disconnection all leads to mental health challenges. And we see that in a lot of BIPOC communities, right? There's a lot of these issues are there and people are seeking services to try and get support from that. And I feel like that can only go so far and we need more. And so with revolutionary social work, a lot of that is building this community that we can support each other and find kinship with each other across boundaries, across communities. And I think that's really the only way we're going to be able to make any dent in this mental health crisis that we have. I think trying to get more therapists and more treatment services is great to a certain extent, but it's not going to solve the problem. We have a systemic issue and we need to reimagine what it looks like to heal from that and move forward from that. Christian, what do you?
Well, before you go, Christian, I have a follow-up question for you, Alicia. So, as a clinician, what are the types of, like, how do you talked about it wasn't really until you got your certification as a yoga teacher and you started integrating those kinds of things. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later in the episode, but I think it's important because you just kind of brought that up, that there's not enough therapy in the world, right? So I'm interested in like how you integrate that yoga certification into your clinical practice. Do you see it serving certain clients differently from others? How's the reception amongst folks when they come in and they think they're going to do just right? I'm interested in some of those things.
Yeah, this is my favorite question. Yeah, because it's not like people walk in and they think they're going to sit on the couch and I'm like, yeah, let's do a whole vinyasa yoga flow. It's not like that, right? It's all about the 8 limbs of yoga, which is not just the yoga asana, the movement. The first thing that I teach people is the breath control. And so it's accessible for everybody. And it depends really who I'm talking to. If someone's very much more of like a logical, analytical brain, I may start with like, this is the physiology that's going behind why I'm teaching you this breath control. If someone's a little bit more feely into the somatic stuff, then I'll just start with, let's do some breathing together. And so the first time I meet someone, I want them to leave the place I'm in, whether it's on Zoom or if it's in my office. I want them to leave knowing they have something they can do all day if they need. If they're feeling anxious, the first thing I'll say is extend your exhale. Just make sure your exhale is longer than your inhale. And that in itself, if that's all that I offer to them, that's going to serve them way past sitting in my office for an hour once a week. So that sort of thing, I'll start there. If we need to do some movement stuff, we'll do that. I know it's a lot of stress in shoulders and backs and hips. So we'll work through that. If I notice someone's processing something very difficult and traumatic, we may move into some just more kind of nourishing, nurturing postures that may help as we're talking about these things. But then also just thinking about how much outside of the therapy office they're able to do these things. Would more movement help them? Would the stress that's building up in their hips, are there certain things I can give them to help release that each night? Maybe progressive muscle relaxations, those sort of things. So it's immersive. It's not kind of like this strict thing. It's really just how I think it could benefit the people. And I've had such a good reception from it. And I think because it's empowering, because people can do it themselves, right? You don't need me. And I always tell people, you're graduating from therapy because you don't need me. And that's the best thing we can do as clinicians, is tell people, you do not need me at all. You have all of the things in yourself. I'm just helping you kind of draw it out. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question. It's very immersive and fluid.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay, Christian.
Yeah. First of all, there's no way I can do full justice to the series of questions that you asked, but there's some key experiences that I've had that have kind of helped evolve the way I've thought about this. And I think there's some great comments in here already from Keisha Lamb about systemic oppression.
Yeah.
There's root problems or bigger problems often involved with, systems and other things. And then we have surface level solutions. They don't solve everything for everyone.
Right.
So I think what we do wrong often is we pathologize an individual as it's their individual problem. And it's often much larger than that. And I don't see things as individual problems like that. I think that they come from a variety of issues. An individual suffering is never just their own, or it's never separate from their community, from their environment, from their history, all of those things. But I had a conversation with a friend of mine, a comrade of mine in Virginia. His name's Hawkey Shakur, and we were talking about why Black people don't sometimes or often trust social workers or psychologists, maybe even more. And he said, "Look, we view them as the man, as part of the system, and there's complete distrust from the community that he's a part of." And it just made me think a little bit further and reflect on some of my own experiences. And there's 2 specific ones. One would have been, I was looking for some help with some things when we were living in Honolulu when I first got with Alicia, and just trying to improve my life. I had trouble sleeping. I felt like I was a little bit depressed. And so I
Mhm.
went and I saw a psychiatrist, and I felt like she didn't listen to me at all. That she prescribed me with some medication, and even when I went back and said, "Hey, look, this is not working for me. This is what I think," and I felt like she just completely dismissed what I had to say.
Mm.
And so I kept that with me and started trying to, resolve those things on my own. But then later, when Alicia was pregnant with our first child, Zaid Koa, we were in the hospital and we had relocated to Ogden, Utah, just for financial issues
Mhm.
and things. I had some family there, and it's a predominantly white community,
Mhm.
homogenous in the way that they think about things. Not everybody, but to a large degree. And so we're in the hospital, and there were so many different things about the way that certain nurses would talk to Alicia specifically, um, treating her like an infant, like she didn't have any autonomy. And I'm looking at it like this woman
Mm.
has a master's in social work, has more power than and knowledge than most women I've ever met in my life. And here's this nurse treating her like she's a child. And Alicia had went to great lengths to create this extensive, um, I don't know how you'd say it, very detailed
The
birth plan.
birth plan.
Birth
She
plan.
knew she knew exactly what she wanted and what she needed, and that wasn't just a hunch. She really put a lot of thought into it, and they
Mhm.
just can not everybody, but several of the nurses and folks just completely dismissed her. They came in
Mm.
and asked her in front of me and my I think my mom was in there, without any confidentiality or anything. Are you the one with the STD? And she wasn't, but like, well, how can you say something like that? But anyways,
Yeah.
long story short, if me as a white guy going to
Right.
the psychiatrist and they're not going to listen to me and they're not, taking my own experience and my own thoughts seriously, then what might they do to somebody like Alicia? And so it made sense to me why Black people, for example, wouldn't trust these social workers or even
Mhm.
go further, psychologists, nurses, all of these things, because I imagine the experiences are a lot more prominent, for someone that looks like Alicia than
Mhm.
someone like me. Um, and so I don't know that I think that those are some of the things that shaped my perspective. And, I've just continued to listen to all the students that I've had, of the people I've talked to on the podcast. And I think there's just a huge level of mistrust, and it's historical, it's systemic. And I mean, I'm not saying that therapy can't resolve problems for people, but
Right.
oftentimes it's a lot deeper, and there's a lot more to it than that. And oftentimes we're just pathologizing an individual like it's your own responsibility, but it's much deeper than that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for sharing those stories. I think it's important for people to be reminded, right? And since you went there, we're going to go there. I'm going to ask you, Christian, like, because we've talked about this a lot over the years. Like, I commend and just love on you for being a white person, a white guy that I can endorse and that I feel good about, like, not just having conversations with, but also telling other people, like, this is a person you can have conversations with. So my question to you is, in everything that you just said, that experience with your partner, how do you show up as a white male social worker, albeit your your history might not give that off, your but presentation wise. And so, like, how do you show up as that in the mental health social work uh justice world, like with your students, with you live in these in places that have high numbers of indigenous Polynesian populations, and I know that you are very aware of this. And oftentimes others are either not as self-aware or they don't know what to do. They're like, I know I'm white, clearly, but they don't, know how they should show up. What are some things that you do?
Yeah, and I think that's a loaded question, but I think one of my values and my personal values and in revolutionary social work is this sense of deep listening and
Mm,
being able to listen. For example, in my classes, I believe that, along the lines of Paulo Freire and all of that, is that I'm not just a teacher. I mean, I know a lot of things and I've been studying, but in the big scheme of things, I don't know even close to everything or even much at
mm,
all when you really look at it. And so, for example, when I approach a class, I know that everybody in that room, well, whoever they are, even if it's online, comes with their own experience, wisdom, knowledge, and I make space for that because, to be honest with you, I've learned more as a professor listening to my students than I did as a student learning from professors, if that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
And so I try to create that space. And one of the ways I do that is I fully believe in talking circles. And I learned talking circles from a group of Alaska Native women, specifically grandmother Rita Blumenstein, who's since passed on, transitioned on. But where, you know, everybody has an equal voice, and it's opportunities for people to unburden their hearts and to share their stories, their wisdom, their experience. And the overall experience has just been phenomenal as far as how it's been received. To be honest with you, I've done probably 1,000 of them, and I've never had an argument within a talking circle. And part of that is, you know, iterating values beforehand. You know, it's okay for somebody to have a different truth across from you, and we're so quick to want to agree or disagree with somebody, but it's very possible for somebody to have a different truth and to honor that truth, even if it's different than our own. And so I think that's one element is, you know, sharing the space, making the space, using my power. Like if you look at my podcast, you know, they trying to take away all the DEI and everything. And actually at our university, we've been told you can't even use the language anymore, but I do it by, you know, living the experience. And if you look at
Right.
the guests that I've had on the podcast, it's because I value those voices and those experiences. And I think one more thing I want to say that I think a lot of white people can't do, and I can't exactly tell you exactly why, but they're not able to see whatever they consider the other, whether it's a Black person, an Indigenous person, a transgender person, whatever it is, or whoever that person is. They're not able to see themselves in them. And I can't exactly put my finger on it, but I think my experience is growing up in Utah. We had moved from Salt Lake City to a small town. I'm actually in this town at my mom's house right now. It's called Morgan,
Oh, wow.
Utah. And when I was growing up, it was like a town of like 4,000 or 5,000 people, mostly almost all white people, Mormon. Even there was a few Black folks, but they were adopted. And I wasn't a Mormon, and we were poor and came from a kind of a broken family, and you know, smoking and drinking and things like that that were really looked down upon. And I was bullied relentlessly, and I guess what I'm able to do is look at that experience and see how I didn't fit and how hard that was for me. And I can empathize with other people that are feeling the same way, even if the experiences come from different situations or different backgrounds. And so I see myself in you, and I see you in me. And I think that allows us to connect with where a lot of white people are just, whether it's not willing, not able, and maybe that window's they'd never even seen that window open for them. I don't know. But I think that's a big part of it is, you know, the value of kinship. You know, I see you as my kin, whereas I think a lot of white people aren't able to do that. You know, for a variety of reasons.
Yes. Yeah, and I want to just honor what folks are saying, because this is really good, and a lot of folks are just thanking you, one, for naming who you know, your circuit talking circles teacher. So thank you for that. And then there's a question. Is it, sorry. Okay, that's a question. Is it possible to get an email to send any follow-up questions? Okay. I would say we can do that. I will put my email in the chat, so that folks can reach out, and I'll get those questions over to Christian and Alicia. Also, I believe if you don't want your questions seen, I think you can answer or ask in the Q&A. Oh no, I don't know. I don't know if that's anonymous. So never mind. We'll just do the emails. Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Those were really good. Okay, Christian put his in the chat. I wanna, yes, this is interesting, and I could take that conversation down. That's another podcast. That's a whole nother podcast, because I think it's important in the bridge building, right? To, like, what you just said is huge. I don't know how many people are actually realizing that, like how many white people are realizing, oh, it's not that I can't relate, it's that I'm not relating for whatever reason. And so I think that's an important conversation too. So thank you for that. I do want to jump back to you all really quick, because this just makes me think, like, doing this work and living through it can really, like, take a toll on us sometimes. And so to get back to your partnership part, I'm interested in, how do you each experience that, and how do you hold space for your own and one another's mental health? Like, yes, you're out there doing these things for folks and holding these spaces for other folks. But when it's just you, and it's like, Christian, I heard you say you were, struggling with some things. The psychiatrist or psychologist didn't listen to you, and then you moved, Alicia had her. So when these things come up, how do you make space for your own and each other's mental health?
Oh, that is a huge question. I think that changes all the time, but just to briefly touch on what your question was before, I think the biggest
Okay.
thing with Christian is he can only be himself. So he can only show up as Christian, and like everything that he said, that's just him. Like he's not even just,
Yeah.
He's very thoughtful, intentional about it, but it's his soul. So
I
which
know.
I'm
I
very
that's
lucky
why
to
we get
experience.
along, I think. I think that's
Yeah.
why we clicked, because that's me too, Christian. I'm like, I don't even know I don't know what it means to put on or to like, yeah. So I think so. Wait, I think Dr. Cersei actually has a question before we move on.
Yes, we have actually an attendee who has a question, and I was wondering if they might be able to ask.
Yes, please. Let's get the questions before, I don't want to move on too far.
Yes, so I'm going to bring them in to talk, if that's okay.
Great. Hi, Tanya. What's your question?
Tanya, we can't hear
Hello?
you.
Sorry, that was I didn't have a question. It's an accident. That hand was an
Okay.
accident. So sorry. I'm so sorry.
All right, no worries.
Good to hear
No
you.
worries.
That's so sweet. Yes. So folks have been very excited about what you're sharing. And I did want to share with you that someone in the chat, Maria Hartman Hernandez, is actually writing a grant right now on using talking circles in schools. So
Love
said it
that.
couldn't be more effective or appropriate right now for her. So I'm going to go off stage.
Okay.
Sorry for that, Tanya. I didn't mean to like put you on the spot, but let me not interrupt your flow.
No worries. No worries. Okay, yeah. So, well, anything else you want to say on that before we jump over to the how you make space for yourself and each other?
No, that was
Okay.
it. And I think just making space, the biggest thing that we do, I think, is we are each other's mirrors as well as our kids are our mirrors. But I think we keep each other in check on that a lot, where we notice when the other person is burnt out, having a rough day, all of those things, which I think is so important in a partnership, is not to ignore those signs. And then just checking in of what do each other need. I think that's a big one. We know after this decade together, we know kind of this is going to help you. And we've been eating kind of crappy. We need to change this, right? Like you haven't been doing your yoga practice as much, like those sort of things where we can check in on each other. And I've also found, I think at the beginning of my career, I would often come home and try and dump things on Christian of like, I need someone to talk to about this. But the fact that we work so closely together, developing different projects and the podcast and all of this stuff, there's some things which I think they don't need to be in the home as well. So I've kept a lot of stuff that's to do with my clinical work with my colleagues, and I'm able to consult and vent and dump on them rather than bringing that all in the home, because we work so closely together on so much.
Yeah.
I think that's helped, but maybe Christian has. Maybe he thinks I still do it too much. You can ask him.
No, I would say from my perspective, what Alicia has given me is the freedom to be myself. She's always loved me for exactly who I am. And I walked through a lot of life thinking I had to be somebody different. And I grew up with, I never know how much I should say about, when we're talking about family and things like that, but I kind of grew up in a lot of ways without a lot of affection or care in certain ways. And it spiraled into me truly believing that I was cursed as an adult and that certain things wouldn't come to me. And when I met Alicia, that was I was starting to change that just a little bit. But what Alicia has done for me is she's just such an honest and loyal person with such high integrity. And it's just like a part of her soul. I'm not even sure if she actually ever chose that, but it's just who she is. And so I went from a life of not being sure where I would go next, or, if this would be there for me or that would be there for me, to literally for the last almost 10 years now, to coming home every day, every night, and knowing that somebody was going to be there to love and care for me. And we're like a yin and a yang as well. We're very different in our backgrounds and how we, from different countries, different socioeconomic statuses, things like that. And we're just able to counterbalance each other in the perfect way. He's good at the things that I'm not. I'm good at the things that she's not. And we both accept that about each other. And don't get me wrong, we are not perfect. We get into it, and we've had our our ups and downs for sure. But there's that, again, that deep sense of loyalty to where I would never question Alicia, whether she cares for me or whether she'd be there for me or whether she would support me. I know that 110%, and that's allowed me to be the full version of myself. And I think, again, she's just such a strong individual as far as what she believes in and leading with the heart. And it's always, ever since the first day that we've met, and it's increased ever since. It has allowed me to grow, but also she has motivated me by the way that she has grown. Without getting into too many details, she talks about yoga and meditation and breath work. When I remember when we met, I was first getting into it and thinking, oh, this is cool. This is something that I can do. And I introduced it to her, and I remember that we'd be doing these like 10-minute meditations and she'd fall asleep and couldn't, really,
I could
really
not.
could not do it. But she has stuck
That's
with it to where
incredible.
she surpassed me by miles and miles, to where I'm very still erratic with my self-care and taking care of myself in such a way. Alicia gets up every morning at 5 a.m. and does her practice every day. And as erratic as I am, that's true motivation to be able, there's nothing better than to be able to see somebody that you love and care about and look up to doing it themselves to motivate you. And so, other than that, well, I think that's what I got for now.
I mean, that's a lot, and I love that. And shout out to you, Alicia, for getting up at 5 o'clock. I mean, because so much of what we talk about in mental health, right, is about diligence. It's about practice, right? It's about routine.
Consistency.
Yes,
Yeah.
consistency. And I do see a bunch of stuff in the chat, so I'm going to get to it. I want to go back first to this little joke Chanel made, asking is Christian an Aries? No, Christian is not, but Alicia is. But she asked that, I think, because we're so similar, me and Christian. But Alicia, I think you and I are similar in some ways too, but I don't know, maybe it's the masculinity thing. I don't know. That's Christian and I, because I'm also like all over the place, but I have this piece in me where I have systems, and my mental health works better when I have certain systems, right? Like my keys being in the same place all the time. I have an altar. So I do, like those types of things that I try to ensure a little bit of a routine, because otherwise I will also just be like a hot air balloon, right? Like, so thank you for sharing so much of that. And I want to go to the chat because I saw a really good thing from Ark. Thank you for being on, Ark, as well. And I don't know if you okay. So Ark is the executive director of Youth Move National, and Youth Move National. Y'all know I like to give shout outs, and I like to make sure that my people get what they need, right? So Youth Move National is looking for board members. If anybody wants to apply to be on the Youth Move National board, okay. So thank you, Ark, for being here. I think sometimes the opposite can be true as well. Folks feel such a strong desire that they have to fully understand fully live and experience. Okay, so this speaks to Christian's last piece, I think, about relating, before they can empathize. And I just think, like, why? That sounds exhausting and a lot of pressure and impossible. I'm Mexican, indigenous. I have no idea what it is like to be white, and I never will, but I don't need to know that they are valid and deserve respect and affirmation just like all people do. We shouldn't need a reason. We shouldn't have to understand or live something or even relate, just to know that all people, all people deserve respect, and love and affirmation. But that's just an I statement from me. And truth be told, oh no, what's the rest of that? For some reason, mine is not going.
Do you want me to get the rest?
Yes, if you don't mind. Oh, there we go. Mine is.
Obviously, you got
Go
it.
ahead.
Okay, and truth be told, obviously understanding and experiencing those things does help develop empathy. So maybe I'm just proving myself wrong. Well, I love that full circle.
I know. I love Ark. You had a whole conversation with yourself.
That's what it's about. You got to process through these things sometimes. But
Yeah, I'm interested in you all's thoughts. My thoughts on this are I agree. And I'm such a both and person. And I think that, yes, we should not need to be able to walk in someone else's shoes or relate to their experience in order to believe that they are valid. And for some reason, a lot of humans seem to need that. So I think I'm with you, Art. And I recognize what Christian is saying, and maybe that's colonization, that's socialization. White people were also taught things, and one of the things they were taught is that you don't relate, you don't need to relate, you don't have to, you know what I mean? And so I think these things are much deeper than, well, we know that they're much deeper than these kind of, like someone said earlier, kind of surface level responses. But I think that that's a good place to start, is that there's somehow a disconnect in how white folks are and or are not able to see themselves. I appreciated it more with that piece when you said see themselves in one another, because the I see you is the part it's I see you before I feel you. And you can't really get to the feeling part without the seeing part. I don't know. So I'm all over. But what do you all think about what Ark said?
Christian, you want to go?
Well, I would say, first of all, I just very much respect the way that they articulated themselves in the sense of saying that they respected me. I think sometimes, and this is my personal perspective here, my personal opinion, but I think that we make too many assumptions oftentimes in this world, and whether it's toward white people or towards black people or to whoever, and we assume that somebody is a certain way because of how we categorize them. And I think amongst all these groups, there's an extreme amount of diversity. And as I said with the talking circle, it's okay for somebody to have a different truth than our own. And if we're able to listen to that truth deeply, then perhaps our truth might change a little bit once it's set with us and marinated for a while, if that makes sense. And I think you said it, I don't know exactly, you said it a minute ago, Cache, but white people, and again, that's a big generalization, but have been taught certain things, and it's not all the individual's fault. It's not their fault for all the things that have been implanted into them over time. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to move past those things. And so I think that, you can have empathy without walking in another person's shoes, but I also think that most of us should be able to call on some kind of experience to relate in some way. Even again, if it's not going to be the same. I'm not going to understand what it's like for a Mexican indigenous person, how they've had to walk through life and the experience. I'm obviously not going to fully understand that, but there are probably aspects of it that I can relate to and see, like, oh, I had an experience like this, like I was saying about the psychiatrist, that where it made me feel a certain way. And so I could see how you can feel that way. And some of us are not able to do that for some reason,
Right.
for a variety of reasons.
Right. And Keisha Lamb said earlier when you were talking that it's the othering, right? So I think what you're saying is we all have experiences of being othered.
Mhm.
We all do. I met a lot of people. I've never met a person in my life who was like, yeah, I felt like I fit in everywhere I went. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's interesting. I agree with what you're saying, that we should be able to do that.
Can I add something real quick? I would say
Yeah, of
that
course.
some people have to be othered a lot more, right? When I was working at Utah State University, I could go and look at the wall of presidents and it's all white people. I could go to University of Alaska and look at the wall of presidents and it's all white people. I could go to the
Right.
University of Hawaii and it's mostly all white people. And so I could look at the presidents of the United States and it's mostly all white guys, right? And it's not like I identify with each of them, but at the
Right.
same time, it's not exactly othering me either, if you know what I mean. Whereas
Mm.
somebody else from a different background is going to be othered in 99% of those situations. And so some people are going to obviously have to struggle with it more than others.
Yeah. And I think another major difference is, Christian, you see a problem with that. And I think maybe what Ark is speaking to is, why aren't other white people, not like you're the only one, but why aren't a lot of white people able to see the problem in that? They might even recognize it, but to actually see it as a problem is, I think, where we find ourselves. And so there's some comments right quick, and then Alicia, if I'll jump back to you if there's something you'd like to add. Art just said, nothing but respect, totally agree with all of this. We're brilliant. Thank you too, Art. Thank you for diving deeper into this. Kyle says, two cosmic principles of interconnectedness and relationality. Absolutely. Sawubona, I see you, and Ubuntu. Yes, we all know that. A person is a person through relationships with other people. Absolutely. And then Chanel says pseudo superiority also plays a large role in their individualism and desire to other. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then we see that play out in our systems, right? I think about, this is a stat that I didn't put up there, even though 60 to 85% of mental health providers are social workers. 60 to 85% of social workers are white women. So when we think about then accessibility, if I'm looking, Cachet, well, not me, because I have a different relationship with therapists, but someone who looks like me is looking for a therapist, and they're like, I want someone who's on identity, right? Your pool of possibilities becomes smaller. So then what does that say about who you can access, what you can access? I know something that the three of us have talked about before, particularly Christian and I, when we were in school together, is like, we're always hearing evidence-based, evidence-based, evidence-based. Well, a lot of indigenous practices don't even get the opportunity to become evidence-based, right? Evidence-based itself was a system, a practice, or a racist practice to actually get indigenous practices out, right? And so the idea, again, that these things are baked into our mental health system, and then Ark said, unless it's stolen from us, cough, cough, Maslow. That's right. And then, yeah. And so I think that those are just some things to remember. It's the system is not just this thing out here. Sometimes we talk about it like it's this magical thing. The system is made up of us. It's made up of people. And so if you have limited options to access, it's Men's Mental Health Month, right, in June. When we think about men, regardless of their background, regardless of their ethnicity, accessing mental health care, I mean, those stats are low as well. And then if you talk about men, you insert intersectionality of identities, of experiences, of profession, what professions they come from, all of those things, the numbers just go lower and lower. Okay. Alicia, did you want to jump in here before? Oh, it looks like Christian was okay. Go ahead.
Oh,
Either of you.
I can't see Christian. Does he have
Can
something
I
to
just
say?
say one thing before I turn it to Alicia? Well, two things. One, watch out for that gecko. It's about to jump on your shoulder
Stop.
behind you. I'm
Oh,
serious.
yeah.
It's a big
It's
one.
been catching all the roaches.
No, but I would say, what you said, Cachet, about a lot of people not being able to see the problem. Well, I would like to flip that. And so, like, take, for example, anti-racism or something like that. It's anti something, but I would say, what are you for? And so why do I have diverse guests on my podcast? It kind of, I guess, could be addressing a problem, but more it's because I see the value in those individuals and how they can add value to putting it out there for everybody else, but also for me. And I think that that's where a lot of people, or white folks in particular, they're not seeing the value that they can get from that. You might be saying by only having white presidents of whether it's a university or the United States, you might see trying to hold on to some kind of power or something. But from my perspective, the value that would be gained from having more diverse perspectives and diverse individuals, and whether that's indigenous folks or whatever, indigenous perspectives, um, it lends an incredible amount of value. And I think even in social work, right, we talk about marginalized people this, marginalized people that, but I think somebody mentioned Maslow a minute ago, right? We're still marginalizing the Blackfoot perspective. Even if we mention it, it's still on the margins. Well, why aren't we starting with that? And why haven't we centered it? Because that's where we would really get the value from it, if that makes sense. And so I like to switch things a little bit from looking at it as a problem to looking at how can we value it, or how can we understand the immense level of value that we get from it. And I go back to the talking circles. The first time I was in there, I was like, this is stupid. I have stuff to do. I got homework to do. I'm hungry. I don't want to listen to all these women and whatnot. But by sitting in there for some time, there was something able to click in me, and I'm eternally grateful for that opportunity, because it allowed me to start listening and to start hearing and to seeing the value. And if you look at me then, and I know it was just before I met you, I suppose, but then you look at me now, I'm a much more valuable person myself today because of that, or because of all of those people, all of those perspectives, all of those things that I've encountered and been able to embody in my own life.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. Thank you for that reframe. I think that's important for people to hear.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say was, when you were having that conversation before, is we are all human. And so I always go back to that. And me and Christian talk a lot about cultural competency, which is this buzzword that social work loves. We hate it because there's no way I'm ever going to be competent in someone else's culture. It's ridiculous. And that comes up all the time in therapy, right? You have to have this cultural competency for your clients. I am never, ever going to be fully competent in the person I'm working with, life, culture, experience, all of that. So we just have to have this basic level of respect, see each other as humans, and come from that love. One of those values we have for revolutionary social work is love as praxis. We live love. And if we all do that together and see each other on this basic level of respect, and you don't have to fully understand someone to just have respect and love for them. They're just your fellow human in this crazy life that we're all living. So that was just my thought on what you guys were talking about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I think, yeah, absolutely. And I want to really quick, before I come to you, Dr. Circe, Kyle in the chat said value equals the willingness to cooperate and share. I totally agree with that. Oh, sorry, I didn't finish it. Willingness to cooperate and share, plus, what is that word? How do you say that word? I'm not ashamed. Episteme pluralism? I know the pluralism.
Epistemic.
Oh, epistemic. Okay, so it wasn't just me. I'm like, because I'm not ashamed if I don't know it. Epistemic pluralism. Okay, good. Yes. Yes, Kyle. And Kyle, I would say if you want to come off to say more about that, there might be some folks that are not sure what you mean by putting those things together, but I really appreciate that. And then Sheeta's on here. What are your ideas around reducing people's apprehension to actually participating in talking circles? That's a great question.
I think that's a good question, and there's no easy answer. And I think from where I'm at and what I can do is by facilitating and put the opportunities out there. And just like me, when I've done that in my classes and whatnot, I get constant people that didn't talk at first. They'll be the ones that are thanking me later on and saying, "Hey, thank you so much for doing this." I didn't think I had anything to say of value, and now I know that I do. And so
Mm.
the only way that you can do it is by having them there and the opportunities there for them to do it, and modeling, positive behavior within the talking circle and things like that. But I'd say, going back to that Paulo Freire book, would be, you make the road by walking it. The only way to do it is by having the circles.
Mm. Ashe. Ashe. Um, oh my goodness. Okay, that was a really good quote. That was a really good quote right there. I'm sitting with that. Kyle, I saw you come up. Did you want to ask your question?
He said he's on daddy duty.
Oh, he's on daddy duty. Okay. Veronica King says, I'm so blown away. I feel like we're moving ahead little by little with these conversations that are very much needed. Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's important, I know some folks, these are not conversations that they have all the time. And I think we need to be having these conversations more and more, and just have the conversation. Like Christian said, you gotta just walk the road, right? Like I think I was watching something, and someone said, it might have been a news show, and someone said, we've gotten so politically correct, so scared to say the thing, so not to offend people, that we don't say anything. And that's kind of how they felt. We've dissolved into kind of a lot of the circumstances that we're in now. And I mean, obviously there is a lot more to that, but I think that that's a good point. Kimberly says cultural humility is generally more accepted than cultural competence. I think cultural humility is a great term as well. I think we should all enter every space with cultural humility. I think cultural competence is making people want to like, is there something in between? I don't know. Maybe it is just cultural humility and then you learn. What do you all think? What about the terms? Or does it matter?
Yeah, I think cultural humility, it holds it pretty well, right? You're always humble, you're always learning, you're always listening, you're always respectful, those sort of things. Yeah, I just have there's that competence with it. It feels so like linear, like you start here, you go along this process, and then bam, here's your certificate of cultural competency. Like that part of it I don't like. It's so much more. Cultural humility is this fluid, ever evolving thing that you can just be and live. So yeah, I definitely think that's a good place to sit in.
Yeah. We have a question here for you all from Doug, who's a fellow. He's another fellow. And he's asking, has there been resistance, or what pushback, if any, have you received in regards to your revolutionary social work, whether it be your actual social, your social work, the way you do your practice, the way you educate, or your podcasts and other materials?
I'll say, Christian, you can talk more on the students. I know there's been such a great reaction there. I will say I try my very best to lead with these values every day, and working in a healthcare system, it is very difficult. There's this resistance, like just a level of resistance that's always there that people don't realize they're putting on all of the staff, that doesn't allow you to fully live these values. But I think generally we've had such a good reaction. And Kristen, if you want to speak to the reaction you've had from your students.
The reaction I've had from my students has been overwhelmingly, phenomenally positive. When I open up a course, I describe what revolutionary social work is and the values and what you can expect from the way I'll operate in the course. And I use voice threads, for example. And if you were to go through my voice threads through the class I'm teaching right now, from the first module, the first week, most of them would be saying, I can't wait to learn more. If it's a new student anyways, they'd be saying, I can't wait to learn more about revolutionary social work. This is what I have been wanting to hear. And I'm so glad that somebody is spelling it out, essentially. Where I've received resistance in two ways, I'd say, is that I think it's outside the status quo and outside the box. So it's unfamiliar and weird to people. And so crickets, like people just ignoring me. And then through the, more from a more systemic side, institutionalized side, like whether it's the National Association of Social Workers or my university, makes them uncomfortable.
Mm.
And I'm good with that, but I'd
Yeah.
say that it makes them like I don't, and again, there's no specific disagreements. It's been very rare that somebody has specifically disagreed with it. It's more, again, like on the institutional side of it, is that it gives them the heebie-jeebies and it makes them uncomfortable. And so they just kind of, it's like opposing magnets, and they'll go the other direction and let me be, because they really can't. Well, I had one time where the let's just say two individuals at the university met with me to talk to me about some things, and I was able to provide a really nice rebuttal and articulate my values and the values of it, and they were like, okay, cool, I don't have anything else to say about it. And so no, I haven't received any like really any direct criticism or takedowns or this or that. I've had things that are more on the fringe, but it's not due to the values of revolutionary social work. It's more like, talking about Israel, Palestine or something, and folks disagreeing with the take that's given. But as far as actual revolutionary social work, the only feedback that I've gotten from students and others, and I get these long emails all the time, not millions of them, but a substantial amount of folks that write me and just want to connect and build on the ideas of revolutionary social work. And to me, that's what it's all about. So that's what I do it. But as far as direct criticism, most of that is just crickets, or like kind of resistance, not even of resistance, but awkwardness from the university or organizations.
We've really found that there's a lot of people that have been looking for something different, that have not seen themselves in the more mainstream social work spaces. And people are like, oh my goodness, what is this? And so that's a lot of what we've gotten. And people who do find it kind of awkward and resist it, if you break down the values and you question, is this one of your values, or do you want it to be? People, people are like, yeah. I mean, love, sure. Like kinship with each other, sure. But the challenging the status quo is one of our core values. And I think people are uncomfortable with that. It takes people outside of their comfort zone. Social work has gotten into this like standardized procedure realm, which is so weird and so far from the art of social work and the roots of social work, where it came from. I don't know. I feel like we're trying to become more something that we're not. And so I think people are seeking something different. And when they look at what we're doing with revolutionary social work, they're like, oh my goodness, let me learn more. So we've had a really good response overall.
Yeah, I love that. And I love I've loved the conversations that we've had. And I would just say also, and anyone who knows me now knows this is my thing. My existence is resistance, right? And so for me, and there's there's this quote I just heard not too long ago that was like, if you're not disappointing people, you're not living. And so I take pride in people being like, you know what? I didn't like that. I'm like, great. Tell me what you didn't like about that and why.
Talk about it.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, I have had so many of your students, Christian, find me on LinkedIn, and I'm like, how'd you find my page? I watched your podcast with Christian and Alicia. So it's really, it really hits. And they obviously appreciate your guests. So I appreciate you all for the people that you welcome in. I do want to jump into the comments really quick because we're winding down. We still have some good time, but we are winding down. I want to make sure I get to folks. Kimberly says, absolutely, Alicia, the cultural humility is related to an individual's lifelong learning process. Dr. Searcy said, I think of cultural competence just seems kind of arrogant. Like, could you truly know someone else's experience? Right. We have I do not want to butcher this name because people butcher my name. Senabu. I'm going please put your pronunciation in the chat. If I butchered that, I do apologize. But they said I use cultural awareness. I like that. How do you all feel about? Yeah. Yeah, I like cultural awareness. Arc says intentionally do the actions to be culturally do the actions to be culturally relevant to the communities in which you seek to serve or learn from. So maybe there's, oh, okay, I see. Yes, something around like cultural relevancy. That could, yeah. And I think maybe these terms could also be used depending on what you're referring to.
Right.
You know, I think I always talk about entering every space as an outsider, even spaces that I think I have belonged to. Like, I'm born and raised Philly. I've been back here now for 5 years, but I was gone for 20 years. So when I came back, I was an inside outsider. You know, I had not been tapped into the local economy, the local business structure, like I hadn't been tapped into those things, anything beyond like my family, right? And so I think it's important to just keep those things in mind, and regardless of what you call it, if you recognize that that is not your culture, and you enter a space, a community like that, people will appreciate it. At least it's worked for me.
I think that's important, Kashe, just to touch on that. It's like the words, language is important, but it is what we do. You know, the actions and what we're living that's important. I think all of these kind of express what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, we have a good question here. I don't know who wants to take this, but Duckworth says, how do we support each other in today's environment where deportation is impacting the Latino community? And man, and we could talk about that from every angle, because there's the social work system, who we know is like turning foster children over and, you know, participating as they are. Then we also have law enforcement. We know what they're doing. I mean, every branch of the government right now, and the impact that this has on the mental health of not only the Latino community, but I would offer the collective, like the collective grief and collective crisis that is happening right now. You all want to speak to that?
I think basically we have to care, one, and we have to be talking about it, right? Because if we're not having these discussions, some people will never know.
Yes.
And so the more we talk about it, the more we speak about it, then we start building this community that does care and that knows. And that's the basic level. And then, I mean, there's so much that is out of our control, but there is a lot that's also within our control. And so finding those things that we can do. But people, we have to start from that foundation. I think a lot of people they're not willing, or they don't feel like they have the capacity, which is real, right? To know about what's going on. But we have to care. We have to care about each other, and we have to be talking about it. But yeah, like actual specific things is hard. But that's where if we dialogue with each other, then we can start building ideas and share what we can do.
Yeah.
Christian, I don't know if you have other.
Yeah, honestly, it's a really tough question for me, and I don't know if I know the answer. And I think it's something that I need to continue to listen and learn more about. And we haven't been in living in areas with a large amount of Latinos. We've been back and forth between Alaska and Hawaii, but we did have that stint in Utah where I was, what was my title? I don't even remember what my title was. I worked in the access. What was my title? I was in the
Diversity coordinator? I don't know what it was.
I don't remember what it was,
like the student affairs coordinator or something.
Something like that.
I worked in the Access and Diversity Center, and I was actually the advisor to, what were they? There was the Black Student Union. What was the Latino one? I can't. The Latinx Student Union, I think is what they called themselves. And it was during when the first Trump administration had come in, and there was a lot of things about the dream with the Dreamers, and we actually had a couple students that became really close to, and I just did the best that I could to listen to them, and I did what they asked me to do. And we had a couple little marches, and I wrote a letter to the editor that got published in the local newspaper, and things like that. But I think for the most part, it's something that I need to listen and see how other people that are actually know more about it than I am and that are living it, and how can I support them and things like that is the way that I would look at it.
And if there's anybody, I mean, this is why we love having dialogue on the podcast. Because if we can bring people on to talk about this stuff that know so much more than us, that's where we just love having those conversations, and then we can share it with everybody. And that's how we can build this care and support and then action from there.
Mhm.
I remember too at that time, Alicia status would have been, would have been what people would call illegal, and we had people in my family that were harping on, illegals and this and that, quote unquote. And I had to check them a couple times and say, well, you know that Alicia right now, her status is illegal. She stayed here, and we actually had to get married earlier and than our actual wedding and things like that. And so that's another thing that helped us to empathize with other folks might be going through. But I had
Mhm.
to check a few people on the way that they were talking about it.
Mhm. Absolutely. And even that terminology, right? Like that a human might be illegal. It's like that. I mean, I know you said status Christian, but that's not how folks talk about it in the street, right? So
Yeah.
I think even that term, hearing that term when we're talking about people is a huge activation point for me, because how is that possible?
Yeah.
Like, so many of us are not where we originated, whether it be in this life or because of our ancestors, you know what I mean? And so it's interesting. I recognize that we're talking about a lot of different things, but always bringing it back to mental health. Like this is, I can't imagine. I mean, I can imagine, but I can't imagine what it would do to my psyche to hear that I am illegal all
And
the
walk
time.
around with that stamp on you.
Right.
Because driving around in Utah when I'm illegal, like you said, the impact that has on your mental health is incredible. Like you have this hypervigilance of someone's going to pull me over for something ridiculous.
Mhm.
Then they're going to find out, then there's going to be this snowball. I have children,
Right.
what I do with my children. And
Right.
I had Christian, I had a supportive family, let alone people that don't have that and that have
Right.
this stamp of illegal. Walking around with that, what that does for our mental health. A lot of people don't realize what people are living with on the day to day, that fear. And we know
Yeah.
what stress, the high cortisol levels is doing
Yes.
to our body, causing dis-ease, that we then it spirals mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, all of it. And yeah, I'm glad we're talking about it, because I don't think that's talked about
Absolutely.
enough.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I don't separate anything from mental health, right? Like
Mhm.
because if you're alive, you're dealing with some mental health stuff, because this world is just crazy. And so for me, like I would even say it's one, let me just say I love your responses. I love the simplicity of, first you got to care. You got to care at all that it's even happening. You got to care enough to have the conversations, to actually talk about it, to ask the questions. And then Christian, with you coming in with the listen, right? So after you care and you ask, you need to listen, because I think folks have a interesting habits of thinking that they have the solutions that the community already knows that they need, and you didn't come to me and ask me what I needed, right? You made an assumption. And so I think it's important that we do listen. And one of the things for me is just recognizing what is happening and responding in the ways you can in the moment. So I'll give a funny example that, well, Chanel thinks it's funny. I think it's me being a good community member. Now, I live in Philly. We're honkers. Okay. Yes, we are honkers.
Yes, you are.
When I lived in Hawaii, boy, I was like imaginary honking all the time, because we don't honk in Hawaii. But I was Philly, we are honkers. But now when I drive, and if it's a Latinx person in front of me driving slow, I decided I'm not gonna honk, because you're probably driving out of fear that something you might get pulled over, and I recognize that that is just something like very small, and someone might think that it's a joke, and it's like, but these are just like, when you live like that, when you live consciously, I think you think about every little thing. Like when we walk by construction sites, we'll warn if there's going to be people on, if there's, if law enforcement or ICE and we got notice are on site. I share things on social media. We have a very good community sharing information in Philadelphia that I'm appreciative of. So I share those things all the time. And I think it's just the little things. It takes nothing to be like, hey, y'all might want to be careful out here today. They're out. You know what I'm saying? Like those, and we've had situations already, because our mayor is not Yeah, anyway. So I think when we're talking about collective mental health and how do we show up for our neighbors, it can be in those simple ways. I see there's some more things in the comments. Like to follow up regarding revolutionary social work perspective as it relates to holistic harm reduction approach. They put their website in there, so that's great. Okay, I have now, because we are seriously winding down. This has been an incredible conversation. I'll have to have you guys on for part 2. I do have one or maybe one or two more questions. We'll see. Oh, you know what? I got some rapid fire questions. You guys want to answer those? They'll
Let's
take
do
us
it.
about 2 minutes. Let's do some rapid fire. Okay. A question: did they care about our calls driving while Black? Okay, I'm not going to get into that. That's another podcast, okay?
Part 2.
But I think when we talk about showing up for each other's communities, it can get complicated. There are histories between communities, and that also contributes to our collective mental health, our societal mental health. So I think that those are conversations that we need to be having. We will come back and do a part 2. But also stay tuned to this podcast, because we will be having some more folks on that will also be able to discuss this from a first person perspective. And I'm sure, I'm going to let you do your promos in a minute. Okay, so we're going to do the rapid fire. Okay, one word to describe your mental health right now.
Ooh, evolving.
Mm.
Complicated.
Mm. A quote or mantra you return to.
Mine is be cool, be calm, be a master.
I was trying not to steal yours. That's like ingrained in my brain now.
You can have the same one. Is that like a couple's mantra?
Yeah, that's just something that, that's been going through. I think Christian brought it to me. And
Okay.
I
Just
love
wrote
that.
it.
But yeah.
I wrote it down one time when I had a stressful meeting, and I wanted mastery over myself. I'm clarify what I mean by mastery over myself and my emotions. And if I can be cool, be calm, and be a master over my own self and my own emotions, then I can do anything, and nobody can touch me. And we just started writing it down in bold letters everywhere, and it's just my mantra whenever I wrote it down on this paper right before I came into this meeting.
Yeah. It's such a good one.
Okay, Jessica in the chat said, Keshe, I would love to know your answers too. Okay, I guess I will. So my one word to describe my mental health right now is waves. Waves. A quote or a mantra that I return to. So I live by quotes. Anyone who knows me, no, I live by quotes. So I don't know that I can have just one quote, but the quote that I return to probably most often, because it's on the bottom of my email, it's in my email signature, is Maya Angelou. People will forget what you did, they will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And I return to that. That is how I live. That is how I practice everything through that. So,
I love
okay, thank you. One word to describe your relationship health right now.
Oh, I can't.
Vibrant.
Yeah, I miss him. It's not one word, but
Oh, wait, what did Christian say? I missed it.
That vibrant.
Vibrant. Okay, vibrant and miss you.
but
Oh,
one word, adventure. Adventure would be. We're definitely on an adventure.
Okay. Okay. For me, which relationship? I'll just say complicated. How about that? It's an adventure too. It's an adventure too. A practice that's saving you right now.
My yoga practice.
Mm.
Listening, and I'm gonna give you 2: listening and just breathing.
Yes. Yeah. Mine, I also have 2, and that is ancestor and altar work. That is saving me right now. Truly. All right, last one is, what does liberation feel like to you today?
Growth.
Mm.
This is still one word?
Yes, this is still, oh, no, not one word. This is just the rapid fire, but go ahead.
Oh,
I think liberation goes hand in hand with freedom. I think I lived a lot of my life, and I think a lot of folks live their lives being having their mind, their bodies, and their souls entrapped in something that they never chose for themselves. I think it wasn't too long ago that we received our wisdom and our knowledge from our parents, our grandparents, our ancestors that was passed down. And then those people went to work and we got put in front of a television and advertisements and things like that got put into us. And that became our culture and the things that we believe and the things that we fear and all of those things. And so I would say that liberation feels like freedom. No, even if I were to be put, let's hope this never happens, but if I were to be put in a prison cell, they would never be able to take away my ability to be free in my mind and my soul and in my heart. And so I think that that's where I would start.
and that is one thing that sticks in my mind is that the Bob Marley song, "None but ourselves can free our mind." You know, free yourselves from that mental slavery. We have the power to do that. Whatever they do, and I know we're talking about that kind of abstract they, but we have the ability to free ourselves.
Yeah.
Don't get trapped in that mental slavery.
And I like the other song too by Luciano. I think it's called "Over the Hills and Valleys" or something like that. And he says that it's his main goal or something like that to liberate the captive mind. And I think that's my goal for myself, but also for how I work with students and whatnot too, is to help them liberate their own captive mind, or captivated mind is the way to put it. Liberate the captivated mind.
All right, so thank you both for those rapid fire responses. We're going to end on this question, and I have a feeling that this is going to be short because you kind of just answered a little bit in your last one. But if you woke up tomorrow, social workers, if you woke up tomorrow and the state of mental health and justice were exactly as you had envisioned or dreamed of it, what would it look like?
Oh, wow. There would just be so much. I think when we talk about peace, when I think about peace, I think about love. Like we have this love for ourselves and our love for each other that allows things to be just as it is, more simple, less complicated. Hopefully I can say this on here, but if I'm ever using like psilocybin spiritually, everything feels so simple and clear. And that is my vision for how things can be, because I know they can be. If I can feel it and see it during that sort of journey, I know it can be. And it's always rooted in love and simplicity. So
love
I think there's a
that.
lot of different ways that I could answer the question, but what came to me this time was it would look like a gift economy, and we wouldn't be so stressed about all the, just survival, paying the bills and this and that and taking advantage of each other and trying to get the upper hand. And we would look at each other as gifts, and we would look at the possessions that we do have and the commodities that we do have as gifts. And it wouldn't always be something that we have to get up over on one another, because I think it does such a toll on our mental health to have to live in such a way. It wouldn't. I look at Alicia, and she's a fantastic clinician right now and a therapist. But what if you could do that as gifts instead of having to charge people's insurance and whatnot?
Absolutely. And someone just said in the chat, I wish we had more clinicians that believe in holistic care. Yeah, and I think we're getting more, but yes, we absolutely need more. All right. Well, I want to give y'all a minute. I want to first say thank you. I want to give you a minute to do your promos, because you also, Christian, you got a big week coming up next week. And Alicia, I know you got a book coming out, so I'm gonna give you a second to do your promos, but really quick, I just wanna say thank you so much. I wanna say thank you to everyone in the audience. You all had wonderful, insightful questions, comments. Thank you to Boston Congress of Public Health for giving me this platform. Thank you to my wonderful, incredible, two of my favorite human guests, humans, Yes. Alicia and Christian, you're always showing up. I love our relationship. We need to do a podcast with you two and me and Chanel and talk
Oh
about
yeah.
stuff. I know Chanel will love talking about like being with Aries and stuff too with you. So that'll be interesting. And yeah, I just want to say thank you everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to stay tuned in. You'll get information about when we're coming back. So do you two want to take us out with what folks can stay tuned to from you?
Thank you so much, Cachet. It's been amazing. I love having these conversations. I'll let Christian talk about the NASW next week, but yeah, you can find us on Instagram, Revolutionary Social Work. Our website's just gone live, revolutionarysocialwork.com, and we'll be at the NASW conference next week. Christian, I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity. This has been just an amazing conversation all around. So thanks to the Boston Congress of Public Health for putting it together. Thanks to everybody in the audience that's just inspiring with the comments and the level of consciousness that I'm seeing in there. And thank you to you, Cachet. You are the first person I noticed at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in the social work. You didn't notice me the first time. You noticed me later, but no, you didn't.
Okay, that's
I
right.
love
That's
this for
right.
you.
You did later,
Okay.
but you were the first person I noticed, and you caught my interest. And I think that that's just the power of the universe that shows that we are connected in the way that we are. And I wanted to thank you for something else, and that's for showing me love and understanding despite my imperfections. And when I've made mistakes, you've showed me love instead of hating on me for it. And I think that if we had more of that in this world, then we'd be in a much better place. So I just want to say big thank you, mahalo for that. Yeah, I think that the biggest thing would be go to the revolutionarysocialwork.com, but avoid my personal page because it's just placeholders right now. And I'm going to
I'm
finish
working
writing
on
that
it.
up right after this. And then I've been very humbled and on all of that by all the guests that I've had over the years on the Critical Social Worker and the Revolutionary Social Work podcast. But we have an absolutely killer, amazing set of guests coming up, including Cachet, including Alicia, including Brother Kyle Toon that you saw in the chat earlier, Dr. Michael Yellowbird. We've got Dr. Paul Michael Garrett, professor on expert in dissenting social work from Ireland. We've got Lion Faya, indigenous reggae artist from Hawaii. Am I missing anybody, Alicia? I am missing people, but it's just, I don't need to go through them all, but it's excellent. And so I think the best way to find us is we're not the best at advertising and all that yet. Check out our LinkedIn, check out Revolutionary Social Work on Instagram, things
For
like that.
YouTube.
But what would make it even better was to have you all or some of you all come and ask questions and contribute to that dialogue. Because we're only two people, and some of them it'll just be me. And that's what makes it beautiful is when we get all the voices and all the questions and all that. So if anybody wants to participate in that, I would highly encourage you to do that. And other than that, I'd say the best promo I can give is everybody just keep being revolutionary and keep being your authentic selves and keep showing up and keep moving forward no matter how difficult it is in this world. And eventually we're going to find a way to reconnect on a much larger level. I believe it.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much. I know we got to go. So I'll just say that until next time, stay rooted, stay radical, and stay in love. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, and we're going to have just one final remark. I just want to thank all of you and our audience for being with us today. I know that the director of the program wanted to offer a few comments before we go out. So Sabath, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's a great podcast. We didn't expect anything less, and it's good to hear these conversations. Even someone from a different context that can't really connect with the whole white and black disparity, but I'm able to understand what obtains in different climes. So these even translates to different communities, not just the black and white. So we even here in Africa, we have ethnicity that's in form of racism. So it's quite complex where you could come from the same place with somebody, but probably because of maybe one thing that happened two generations back, there is, discrimination and all that. So it's good to relate with these kinds of conversation. And thank you to our audience for joining in and for providing those feedback. We'll still be sending out the surveys to get your feedback for Cache. And of course, you should expect more coming out of Cache for her podcast with BCPH. So thank you, Christian. Thank you, Alicia. And of course, thank you, Cache, for setting this up. Good night,
Thank you,
everyone,
Sabah.
and stay safe.
Thank you for joining. Bye-bye. I'm going to go backstage.